Good evening, and welcome to the Bible Lecture Series, where our pastor, the Reverend Dr. Robert L. Jeffrey Sr., presents Lessons of a Lifetime. And tonight we have a very special guest, our own Representative Jamila Taylor. And without any further delay, I'll pass the mic to our pastor.
Thanks, Robert. Welcome, Representative Taylor. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
First of all, I want to thank you for doing this. I know you're busy. I know you have a lot of better things to do than be talking to me today, but I appreciate it, and I appreciate your consenting to do this. On Women's History Month, this is Women's History Month, and so we're delighted to have a conversation with you today. And this is, you are the 30th legislative district of, which covers, which covers Kent County, King County, Pierce County, and Des Moines, Auburn, Algona, Pacific, Milton, and the unincorporated parts of King County. So that's a large area.
Well, mostly federal way area, if you think about the 30th
Mostly
district.
federal way.
Yeah.
Okay, so we think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I understand that you went to Virginia State University.
Yes, I am a
I know a
graduate
little
of
bit
an
about Virginia.
HBCU.
I'm sorry, I stepped on you. Say what? Go ahead.
Yeah, I am so proud to be a graduate of an HBCU. Yes.
Yeah, I know a little bit about Virginia State. I went to school in Virginia myself, Virginia Union, and then Union Theological Seminary. So the Presbyterian school up on Brook Road. So, but so I know a little bit about Petersburg. Preached there, I don't know how many times. So yeah, so tell me a little bit about your experience at Virginia State. Virginia State's a great school.
Oh, well, Virginia State, I went there back in the 90s. It was a different, era of just like post, remember that show, A Different World? It was talking about
Yeah, yeah,
HBCUs in such a great way. I always wanted to
yeah,
go to an HBCU, but I was from the West Coast and lived on the
yeah.
West Coast,
Okay,
mostly white areas, and didn't have that Black experience growing up. And
yeah.
so going to Virginia State allowed me to discover more of my cultural heritage, more of how I can connect with other Black folks in real time, not just like at conferences, for
You went to
example.
Virginia State. You connected in real time.
I did. I was able to seek opportunity. I ended up becoming the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, the college
Wow,
campus newspaper. I stayed involved in things that just made me really feel this was the right place to be at the time.
wow. Yeah,
Mhm.
Virginia State's a great school, and it's in Petersburg, which is a military town. So
Mhm.
it's a lot of different kinds of things going on in and around Petersburg. So I used to love to go up to Virginia State, love to go up to Petersburg. So it's a great city, small city, but it's a great city.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's so close to Union and the VCUs around in
yeah,
Richmond.
VCU, yeah,
The way I ended up at Virginia State was that I was doing a national student exchange as part of being a student at University of Oregon, and they allowed us to go to other state schools, and it was on the list, and I was like, yes. My aunt went there, my uncle went there,
okay.
and
So you
I
got
thought,
history.
hey, this is connecting.
Yeah, great, great. So you co-sponsored and got through a bill in 2003, House Bill 1474, which is for low-income housing, fair housing, and tell us a little bit about the
Yeah.
motivation behind that bill.
So, House Bill 1474 is the first in the country to address racially restrictive covenants by providing um, down payment assistance to people who would have been subjected to racially restrictive covenants that became unenforceable in 1968 and their descendants. And so this program is designed to help particularly Black folk, get into home ownership and build that intergenerational wealth. We had a tiny bit of bipartisan support, but it was mostly the Democrats who pushed this through. A coalition of 100 organizations, multiracial organizations. So if you think about the people who were subjected to these racially restrictive covenants, it was not just Black folks, but Black folks were in nearly every racially restrictive covenant. And there were more than 50,000 deeds that were recorded across the state. So, a lot of folks who move here from other states, they think, oh, Washington is so progressive and it's never had any racial problems. And we had racial segregation here and even a case around desegregating the schools and the busing system in the 80s and 90s. So there are a lot of things that are happening in Washington State. How do we address this state harm that's happened here? And so that's why this bill is shaped the way it is. And I also wanted to make sure I honed in on the people who were most likely to be harmed by those the policies of the past of the racially restrictive covenants. And so that's why this is focused really on a lineage effort. So if you can show your family member was here, we have Bible records and other documents that could show that folks were here prior to 1968. I remember someone made a comment to me while we were developing the bill, and an ally at that. They were like, were there any Black people here before 1968? And I'm like, sir, my father literally wrote the book of Black Seattle. So yes, they were, and in fact, very visible ways we were here. We've had a Black legislator in the House, in the legislature, since the day this state was founded in 1889, and it was just a small gap in the late 50s. That we didn't have a Black legislator representing, and now we have 14 Black legislators.
Okay, that's great.
And so, to show that not only are we here, we're growing, we have political influence. And this is one way we were able to show that we are supporting the Black community.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you're doing a tremendous job. I mean, that's a great bill. And a lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people don't know about it, but I know that there are people who don't know about that bill and don't know about the opportunities that bill gives. And so it's important that that information gets out, especially to the community.
What we could do is send you all the materials. Like, one of the things I want to do is go to church by church, letting you all know that the program exists, and that people can apply. It's especially most helpful for folks who have, children and grandchildren who are ready to buy their first home. Because, my grandmother, my mother, they both own homes now and wouldn't qualify for the program. But, for example, there are folks who they want to be able to buy the first home or be able to get the home right next to grandma. So let's find a way to continue to rebuild and sustain community. This year, we have a trailer bill that will expand the what we call the area median income qualifier from 100% to 120%. And that means that a family earning $168,000 in King County, which you think about two people each earning like $80,000, would be able to qualify for a loan. And we have a cap on the loan up to $150,000. And we made it stackable. So there are other programs that are going on, like the Community Reinvestment Program, where you can get $100,000. So imagine getting $250,000 to help support your effort to buy your first home in a community like ours in King County, where home prices are around $500,000, $600,000. You can't get in there on a measly $168,000. That would be very hard for a lot of families. So this is a program that can be transformational. There are folks who are as old as, I'll say as seasoned at, in their 70s, who were able to buy their first home. That means they were subjected to the racially restricted covenants. And then the youngest one was 21. I am so
Wow.
excited to hear a 21-year-old be able to buy a home in the state of Washington. That is an amazing thing. And so I want to continue to tell people more about this program, and just remind them, like, if your family is part of a church, if your family was part of, worked at the Boeing, if they worked at the places where they have good archives, if you
Yeah.
went to school here, you probably can get the old yearbook. You might need to
Okay.
open up the old Bible. It will tell, member of
Yeah.
church since such and such time. There's so many ways to prove your family's presence in the state.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And if you send the information to us, we'll get it in our newsletter, which goes out on the 1st of April. We can
Okay,
put that information directly in the newsletter. And you are welcome anytime to come to the church and talk about it, anytime. So anytime
absolutely.
you want to
Thank
come
you.
in and talk about it, we can have a meeting here. It doesn't have to be on Sunday. Anytime you want to hold a meeting to talk about this legislation, you can come in and do that. You know Lanisha, so all you have to do is phone call her. She'll set it up. So you're welcome here anytime. I
Excellent.
understand you
Thank
have a
you.
twin
I do. My
brother.
twin brother lives with me and my
Okay.
mom. He is an amazing human being. Sometimes we get along, sometimes we don't. But he has developmental disabilities, and
Okay.
I work on policy to help folks who have challenges like that. And knowing
Yeah.
that we can't just think about developmental disabilities for kids who are, needing special education. We need to think about when they become adults. What's a meaningful opportunity for working? What's a meaningful opportunity for day services in an environment that
Yeah.
isn't going to put them with people who would exploit them? What do we
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
about folks who have, like, for example, autism and other behavioral health issues that are undiagnosed and they end up in the
Yeah.
criminal legal system? What
Yeah.
happens with the person, and their family member who's caring for them that's in their 70s and they have reached the age of 50? What happens when that elder passes away, and how do we make sure that these folks are taken care of as they are aging
Yeah.
into their senior years? And so it's really dynamic work that I'm doing here. It's definitely multiracial, and a lot of folks
Yeah.
forget that there are folks of color who have a vested interest in getting good policy in the developmental disability
Yeah.
space. And my brother, he's the inspiration. Sometimes he gets irritated by me, but I'm just going to
Yeah.
keep trying.
Yeah. Well, it's
And
family. It's family.
right, right.
Family. Family is family. So we all know how that is.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm
you grew up
excited
in.
to do that work.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm
Go ahead.
excited to do that work, and
Yeah.
work in a bipartisan way. That's
Yeah.
another thing. Is like, I have Republicans who want to, join the movement, if you will, and
Okay.
understand the issues that cut across workforce and access to services and civil rights. Ability to live in an autonomous way, and things like transportation. People might not understand that, the physical disability, this community in Seattle and King County isn't
Yeah.
as accessible as people really think it is.
No, yeah. I guess you have to have a disability to really realize, just like you have to be black to really realize that it's not what you think it is.
Right, exactly.
Uh, with that in mind, I think that there's a lot of miseducation around the DEI situation because, they're painting that as solely for Black people when the majority of the people who benefited from that were white and veterans and others. And I think Blacks were at the bottom of the thing in terms of benefiting from DEI. You want to say a little bit about what's going on with that now?
I mean, the past is current. Like, history is repeating itself. We saw this movement to advance affirmative action in the 70s, and a program that was promoted by the modern day Republicans who now,
Yeah.
Say all things,
Yeah,
race
because
is
Nixon
bad.
did that. Nixon did that.
Exactly, exactly. And then
Yeah,
we in Washington State know about anti-DEI efforts because we saw the affirmative action go down in
yeah,
flames in
yeah,
Washington State. So
yeah,
this is not a new thing for us. And what's really difficult for people to understand is like they don't know how they were included in terms of benefiting from it. So if you're a white woman not realizing that you're receiving benefits from something that was designed to make sure that you had a seat at the table, and then you see that seat be removed, how do you get empathy for things that may seem to be about other people, but really it also is about you? And how do we build, a coalition of folks who won't start biting at each other? So Black folks and Latinos and Asians and other folks of color have figured out, like, this is not our fight. This is a white woman's fight at this point. Like
Yeah,
they need to
yeah,
step
basically.
in and speak to the men folk.
I think
And
about 55% of the vote for Trump were white women. I mean,
well,
55% of
right.
white women, 55% of white women voted for Trump. So
But I think a lot of people were snurkered by that man, and they didn't believe that they would implement Project 2025. I think what he's doing with Project 2025 is even worse than that plan, because at the speed of which he's doing everything,
yeah,
like the fact that he wants to erase so much history that is not of his choosing, the level of fascism that he wants to bring into the United States, the way he's attacking immigrants and whole economies, like that is, I don't think he really cares about the health of America when he leaves office. Okay, I don't think he cares about it. I think he's causing the internal civil war because people aren't really interested in participating in a democratic process.
yeah, it's going to be a mess. It's already turning into a real mess in this country, and we're going to need people like you, in legislatures and state and national legislatures and then national government to help clean that stuff up. If it can, well, it can, anything can be cleaned up. So we're gonna have
Yes.
to, yeah, we have to create our own coalitions. You you grew up in Seattle. You grew up in this area, right?
I did not. I actually was
Where'd you grow up?
born in Minnesota, grew up in
Oh,
California, and made the migration up
what
to
part of
Eugene,
Minnesota?
Oregon.
What part of
St.
Minnesota?
Paul, Minnesota, but lived in Minneapolis.
I know a lot about St. Paul. Got good friends in St. Paul.
Oh,
Used to
wow.
go there all the time back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, 80s. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
cold.
yeah. Well,
Never
my
went in the
family
winter.
lived on a long street that Prince was all his family lived on that street before he was
Oh, okay.
famous.
All right.
Hmm.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
was
So okay, what brought you this way?
So my dad's a professor, and he got a job teaching at Cal Poly in California, in San Luis Obispo. Then he got a teaching job, a professor job, at the University of Oregon, and then UW recruited him to come up here when I was already in college. And about to graduate. But when I went back to law school, he said, "Come up to Seattle. This is where the jobs are, and this is amazing." And I got up here right around 2008, and then the lights went
Okay.
out.
That was a bad year.
It
That
was
was
it
a
was
year
it
with
was definitely a bad year. But that gave me the opportunity to do some reflection on how I would build my career in the legal profession, how I would find ways of getting engaged in community. And it led me to a position at the Urban League, where I
okay,
was leading youth violence prevention efforts to help kids in our backyard, in the Central
okay,
District in particular. And so I have a footprint of working with folks up in Seattle doing that
yeah,
work. And I still connect with some of my former coworkers on that
okay,
effort, and seeing how now some of them now run nonprofits of their own. And one of
yeah,
them, Kevin Loyal, has was on TV just the other day with his
okay,
boxing gym, and how he's helping kids
all right,
stay out of trouble.
yeah. It's important for all of us to be engaged during these times. I mean, it's something for everybody to do.
Hmm.
Your scripture, and we ask everybody to have a scripture, and you have one. So
Hmm.
it's Proverbs. Uh, what is it? 21:17? Am I right?
The iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, it's 27:17.
Hmm.
Proverbs 27:17. Could you read that and then just give us a brief explanation as to why you chose that scripture?
Oh, well, let me, 1 second.
You've just said it, iron sharpens iron. I think that's the gist of the scripture.
Mm-hmm. So the reason why I chose that scripture, I don't have it up in front of me,
That's all right. That's all right.
is that it is about mutual aid. It's about how we help each other
Proverbs
grow.
27. I'm gonna pull it up on my phone.
Okay.
Proverbs 27:17. You know, this is the age of iPhones, so you can,
Oh, I found it. I got it. As iron
you got it?
sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another.
Okay. Yeah, that was the
And
gist of it.
so that is what's important to me in that scripture is that we all can improve ourselves and each other. Me having dialogue with you, learning about what you are passionate about, learning about how you want to approach, a problem, how you want to find solutions. You might have ideas that I might not have ever thought about. We can come together in disagreement to come to a conclusion that supports both of us.
Yeah.
And that is something like it just I get inspired by every day, doing that work every single day. That I might be working with folks who we're in agreement on so many things, and then there's this one sticking point.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to sit down at the table. Let's figure this out. Come to compromise. And when there are times where, the person is not willing to engage in good faith, that means that I have to work with others who may want to contribute, and wait for that person to find ways to engage in with, clean hands, if you will.
You know, good faith is very important, and you mentioned that it's a very important reality. To have dialogue, you have to come to the table with good faith. Can you explain
Mhm.
what you mean by good faith? I know it, I think it is, but
Mhm.
can you explain what you
Well,
mean by it?
for me, I think good faith is about being candid and bringing candor to the conversation. It's in you walking with integrity in bringing ideas or your perspective, and then using that to help us get to the other side of the conversation. It could be that we're
Yeah,
just trying to find understanding.
yeah,
And it's a concept that we use all the time in the legal profession, negotiating in good faith so that you can actually come to a resolution. Because if you don't, you'll never resolve. You'll never come to healing. You'll
yeah,
never come to a place where you can find trust,
yeah,
trust and verify.
yeah,
And so, for me, being able to work with so many people where my job is to hear your perspective. My job is to know that when you're telling me that the state is doing something harmful to your property or to you, that you're, giving me the facts as you know it, your perspective. That doesn't mean that there isn't more information that can be brought to the table. But when we're having conversations in good faith, it's easier for me to carry some of what you're saying into other spaces for advocacy for you, for advocacy for us.
mhm. So you mentioned one of the real elements of good faith is integrity. Um, so that's something that I think is essential um, for any dialogue.
Mhm.
Um, why do you think that this struggle with integrity going on today? I think it has always been here, but today seems like it's heightened in terms of people being uh, having integrity when they come to the table.
I think there are a lot of people who are hurt and feel that they have not been heard. And I think folks have misunderstood what being heard means in this day and age.
Mhm.
Sometimes people think that to be heard means that the other person has to agree. That's not always the case.
Yeah,
That I don't have to necessarily adopt your approach to something if I have other information that makes that impossible. If I'm acting in good faith, I will share that information with you. Like, I am unable to do this. I went to check this out. I found this information here. What is your perspective on what new piece of information I have since we last had the conversation? And so for me, integrity is, not just telling the truth. Part of that is the willingness to continue to grow and listen and gather information to the point where you're able to make a decision. Sometimes I feel people don't act in good faith when they intentionally withhold a decision that they've already made, but they
Mhm.
still want to engage you, that they still want you to take action in ways that is counter to what they eventually do. So you're wasting all of our time. We can work on a different problem. You
Mhm.
know, it is one of the things that's quite frustrating when you want to walk with ethics and walk in building trust with folks. And you can't build trust if you don't follow up, don't follow through, don't, hold your word. Then if something you have quote unquote promised can't become realized, that you come back to that original person saying, hey, I got new information. This is the barrier that I now experience. It's not that I didn't hear you and that I didn't agree with you. It's just that, there are factors here that limit us doing this, this, and this. And we might need to approach it in a different way. It leads me to the pivot and that flexibility where we can, work together to continue to find solutions for us. It can be frustrating in advocacy when we hit barrier after barrier after barrier. And a lot of times those barriers are because there are actors out there who really just don't want you to succeed in achieving your goal. So, for example, on the trailer bill that we had for the covenant, we anticipated that it would have been a debate that would be 1 hour. It was 5 hours long of dog whistles, barriers after barriers. And these are people who want to work with me. Okay. These are people who
These
are
are
like,
your allies. These are your
yeah,
allies.
well, they're not our allies. This is like
Oh,
a partisan debate, because
okay, okay.
some of the Republicans will never say out loud that they would support an effort that would support communities of
Okay.
color right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the debate was long, and people were making points that were not based on fact. And it got to a point in the debate where I got up and I said, "Oh, to be passionate and wrong." And
Yeah.
to me, I felt like the debate was no longer with integrity, no longer in good faith when you're making arguments about something that does not even apply to this legislation.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of that going on today, though.
Yes,
There's a whole
yes,
lot of that going on,
yes.
um, especially in public debates.
Well,
Uh,
and that I think is where a lot of folks are losing faith in our democracy, or losing faith in how we are moving things. These are not TV sound bites. Like Washington State Legislature is not going to be on TV every night, and some of these folks are trying to get the quotes that would get them noticed by maybe the Trump administration, so they can be appointed to some position that is no longer going to be there because he's,
I
reducing
guess
the government anyway.
he's dismantling everything.
Right. And
Absolutely.
it's not like, it's not the issue that people are really facing. When you're talking about Republican districts where they have majority folks who are on Medicaid, Medicare, and
Yeah.
now they're about to lose it because the Trump administration wants to eliminate that. That is something that impacts Democrats, Republicans, and folks who can't
Yeah.
even vote. What are you talking about? It
Yeah.
affects children. And so
Yeah.
you wonder why you're getting booed at your town
Yeah.
hall right now, because people are frustrated and they're scared. They're
Yeah.
scared. And it's real. It is real because some people have complete dependencies in terms of their business. Like you might have a contract with Hannaford. You might have a contract with Boeing. You might have a contract with the city of Federal Way or city of Seattle that is dependent on the federal funding.
Yeah.
And that, does impact communities through and through that our federal government, our state government weaves in and out of our lives. As much as people complain about taxes and all that, we have such a regressive tax system in Washington State
Oh yeah,
that
I've
we
been saying that since I got here.
exactly.
No state income tax. That's death knell to poor people. I mean, because poor people probably wouldn't pay that much state, if any, and not having it and putting all the onus on property taxes is just, oh, it's just crazy.
Right. And the fact that just yesterday we heard a bill where the Houston family, Mr. Houston,
Yeah, I
they
know
were
John. I know John. Yeah,
yeah, so they came and testified on the bill that would protect against the same thing happening to other families where a school district using eminent domain basically to
yeah,
do a straw
yeah,
purchase, take the property and then
yeah,
hold it and then sell it to a developer. Like
yeah,
that's how, Black communities were eroded back in the day.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so it was interesting to hear from my Republican colleagues that they don't like eminent domain, but are they going to take up for a Black person? That like I hope they
yeah,
will. I hope they will
yeah.
vote for a bill like this because on the Senate side, it was a bipartisan vote. It was a
Okay.
bipartisan vote. But on the House side, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen because if you're
Yeah,
not moving in with integrity, or if you're no longer willing to sharpen the iron by having honest conversations, then
yeah,
we can't have good policy making in the state of Washington anymore. You're no longer living into the scripture of iron sharpens iron. You're here for the theater. And look, don't get me
yeah,
wrong. I can be about the theater too. I
yeah,
but I will stick to my core values around integrity, around helping community, hearing community, and finding solutions that are within our shared values. Like if
yeah.
your
I shared
value is about
values.
my
Yeah.
destruction, I don't want to hear it.
Absolutely. That's me too. The whole concept of reparations, I think, sticks in the craw of a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't understand it because, I think Germany has paid what, $70 billion to Israel for what they did, and billions of dollars has been paid out to others. I don't understand the whole concept of reparations being um, a bad thing when it comes to African Americans, especially those who built this country on free labor.
Right. Well, that's because they want to erase our contribution. They want to erase our presence. They want to benefit off of all of our labor, but leave our advocacy behind. And I think this is, a fascinating time when you've got a president willing to, bring the Foreign Aliens Act up again, which was used to intern the Japanese who received reparations. Okay, so history is about to repeat itself, but
Yeah,
you know what? We have new tools, we have new coalitions, we have new risks that we can push back against the tyranny that is being pushed upon us.
yeah, yeah. That act is very the prospects of that act being used recklessly is very frightening.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that President whatever, I don't even want to call him president, but Trump, what
No, he
he
is the
wants to
president.
do is end birthright citizenship.
Yeah,
It takes,
yeah,
one line of logic to get to the African Americans who are descendants of
yeah.
enslaved people.
It's not a long step. Not
It's
a,
not a long step. And at the end of the day, then you have to deport all the folks who came here through other means, who are part of, white America as well, because the only, native born
yeah,
are Native Americans.
yeah,
And I'm
absolutely. And
sure we can give land back.
he can start with his own family. I mean,
Mhm.
but anyway, so yeah, I think that this is a very dangerous time. And how do we create mutuality in our own community? Because that's been a struggle for us. I mean, um, it's been a struggle, well, I would say for me to create that, to see and to experience mutuality in our community. And I think we need it now more than ever.
Mhm. I mean, I think that's an essential and internal question I continue to struggle with. I've been not a traditional activist in community, but I've
Yes.
been an advocate trying to navigate spaces that, not a lot of people go into. I
Yeah.
know what it's like to be uninvited by law enforcement in conversations that impact Black
Yeah.
people. I know what it's like to be uninvited to conversations with Black people about Black people for Black people because I somehow
I
didn't
do
have the
too.
right answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
it, the right answer.
Right.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that we're not a monolith, that we all,
Yeah.
come to the table with our own ideas and
Yeah.
resources, and sometimes our own blind spots. This is
Absolutely.
one thing that I talk about on a regular basis. Like, I might know a lot about Black history, but I don't know about Filipino history. I don't know about Latino history in the same way I do
Yeah.
the Black history. And so I'm willing to sit and listen and find coalition. Like, you're aware of the Gang of Four. You've got, Larry Gossett and the other three gentlemen from the different communities being able
Yeah.
to come together. But I do think we have more of that now, but it's not, you don't have like
I'm sorry.
leaders,
I'm
leaders
sorry. My
identify.
phone is going off for
Oh
some
no.
reason. I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's
I
okay.
apologize. I
Um,
apologize.
we don't have like, I don't think right now we're putting all of our eggs in one basket in one single leader. We have leaders working quietly and loudly
Yeah.
in different spaces. So how do we make sure that our efforts in this way, saving the church, like how do we return back to a faith where folks
Yeah.
feel welcomed,
Yeah.
saving the government, and making sure that it is of service to community, and especially
Yeah.
in areas where philanthropy is never going to do it. Never going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to get enough donations for a road.
Yeah.
You're not going
Yeah.
to get enough donations for a school.
No, you're
But
right.
you can create pockets of like the mutual aid and mutuality. But that also requires us to have, a level of trust and faith in each other and a willingness to disagree on things and still come back to the table and come back
Well,
for
I think
another
that,
day.
I think there's a scripture in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 12:12,
Mhm,
that says the body is not one member but many. The
mhm,
foot cannot say to the hand, I'm not a part of you. The hand cannot say to the foot. The ear cannot say to the mouth, or nose, and that sort of thing. And it's understanding the diversity of our purposes
mhm.
and what our purposes are very diverse, and that we are not all about the same thing, but we're all about the same thing, but we're not all going there on the same road. We're all
Right.
trying to get to the same place, but we're traveling on different roads and have different skill sets and different responsibilities.
Mhm.
I think that's what we have to, that's a place where we have to get to in the community to understand. I
I
don't
think
know.
so. And I think you do that by moving in good faith and being willing to engage folks who disagree with you.
Yeah,
The work I do as a legislature requires me to stakeholder an issue. And I look at, well, who's missing from this conversation? Who's impacted by this legislation that may feel it in a different way than those who are promoting this thing or that thing? And really how historically can we change the dynamic? And I see that like being impacted by the legislation. Like I will say to my colleagues, did you engage the NAACP? Did you engage the Faith Action Network? Did you
yeah,
engage some of these programs that are closest to the challenges in community and have great solutions? But have historically not been at the table in the same way as they are now. And our government and our legislative process is hard to demystify for some. I try to break it down into seasons. We're in winter
yeah,
season when we're sitting down with pencils on paper trying to do the test. Then after
Okay.
the test, we get the results. Okay, that's the law that we passed.
Okay.
And then we, continue to rest a little bit. We have to rest. We have to rest. We have to rest because
Yeah.
it's exhausting. Then you go into summer and you're like, learn. You're resting and learning, resting and learning. And then in the fall, you're reconvening and getting your pad and paper and starting to come up with the policy ideas that you want to prioritize this year. And so when I move in terms of engaging with community, I say the best time to like engage with us is in the fall. So right after Labor Day is when you'll see me, load up all the
Yeah.
meetings, and I might call you all and say, hey, what do you think your members of the church would feel about this policy or this legislation when, for example, it says that all churches need to have an extra 5 windows on it. Well, why
Yeah.
is it just a church?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the time when I'm trying to work through things. And then when we get to the legislature, I leave enough energy to handle the last minute, crisis moments. This year we're getting more clear a picture on budget issues. We're also dealing with crisis that's coming from the federal government. So how do we protect our state?
Yeah.
Things that I never thought I'd be participating in, I'm participating in order to protect communities. And that's where, like, how are we looking at protecting our privacy, our data? How are we protecting our institutions that have always been a safe haven? So, you think about our immigrant families that would go to a church for safety
Yeah.
so that ICE won't come get them or
Yeah.
other people
Yeah.
won't harass them. How do we
Yeah.
protect the body from the enemy that could be coming technically from within our borders?
Yeah. Yeah. That's an important issue right now because they are coming. They are coming to schools. They are coming into places of work where people work,
Mhm.
and even to churches to get people. So
It's vulnerable.
sanctuary,
Mhm.
it's really bad. It's really bad.
And I don't
Um,
want to cast the folks who are doing ICE informant in the I
no,
don't want to
I'm not.
cast the
No,
workers. Mhm.
I've always been believed that people who take these jobs as policemen, as ICE workers,
Mhm.
are trying to feed their families.
Right.
And basically they're trying to do like I would hope the best job they can, but they're in an impossible situation because they have people over them and people in the environment in which they are doing these jobs are are creating coming out of racist environments and you can hold them responsible, especially when they abuse people. But I think that we just need to create better environments and better social systems where people
Mhm.
can uh, mentally be able to do a good job. Right now, I don't think they can mentally do a good job when they've got people hollering at them from business sectors and everybody else telling them uh, in racist ways to treat people differently.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I think they're as much victims as the people they victimize in many instances.
Yes.
You got a president who's giving orders. I mean, you got to keep your job, but at
Mhm.
the same time, it's calling upon you to do things that sometimes are horrendous.
And here's the thing that this might be a risk for me to say it, but there are some policy areas that need reform so badly. Like we needed a comprehensive immigration reform package, and
Yeah,
one was ready to go that would have been bipartisan. But I now see that the president wanted it killed so that he could do what he's doing right now.
yeah. They had an agenda. That's obvious. That's obvious. And Kamala told them what the agenda was, but nobody believed her. And well, we believed her, but a lot of
Mhm.
people didn't. So
Right. Mhm.
we are where we are. Um, so as we proceed in your legislative journey, what are some of
Mhm.
the things coming up on the horizon that you want to do? Some of the things, your wish list of things that you want to accomplish
Mhm.
um, as you move forward.
Well, in terms of this year, I have several bills that are still alive. I have a bill around family reconciliation, ways to keep families together prior to full involvement in the foster care system or DCYF. We have programming in that bill that would bring it back into community. So you would have community-based organizations that know these families, that are trusted
Yeah.
messengers that can help with the family healing. I love that. I
Yeah,
have
no, I love that too.
and I have a bill around condo liability reform that would help get more condos like let's say you have a house that's a 5-bedroom house and you want to convert it into a duplex. This bill will make it easier for the construction to happen on that condo conversion and things like that, to work on infill. A lot of support from coalitions, everyone from the realtors, obviously, the builders, to folks around communities of color, where you're trying to get into home buying at a lower price point. In the organizations like Habitat for Humanity. I have a parenting plan bill to address the issues when both parents may have allegations of challenges of domestic violence, mental health, substance use, a mix of things, and a mix of things that are not there. And one of the challenges we have right now in the court system is that judges have such wide discretion. Sometimes they're not using any discretion. And so we are narrowing how and giving them guidance on how to use their discretion in order to protect the children and protect survivors from ongoing abuse. And so that bill is pending right now. Again, I have the follow-up to the covenant bill that would expand the eligible participants. And the other thing I forgot to say about it is that we have
Okay.
a portion of that would be loan forgiveness. So it'd be for folks who are 80% AMI. And the reason we use AMI at 80% is it doesn't become a taxable event, because you imagine
Okay.
getting $150,000 in 1 year
Yeah.
could completely destroy your entire budget. And so with that, the loan forgiveness really could advance that family much faster in building up the equity to get them to the next level home when they're ready to sell. These are exciting but controversial
All
bills.
of those are exciting things, but there are also things that are needed in our community, especially the Black African community. The family reconciliation part is really needed here in terms of our children reconciling with their parents and 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 spouses reconciling with each other. That's a great bill.
Mhm.
So you're going to be pushing that. You got a lot of work cut out for you, because
I do,
those are
but
kind of heavy lifts. Those are kind of heavy
exactly.
lifts. They
Another heavy
shouldn't
lift
be.
that
They
did.
shouldn't be, but they are.
But that's the thing. I can do hard things, and I am not okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
have prayer for me, because I'm
No,
willing to go
no.
into
Well,
those conversations that some people are avoiding. And that
yeah.
doesn't mean I don't get hit by the daggers or folks who do things to undermine my efforts, and that there isn't like politicking going on in that space. Some of us are just not okay. I
Yeah.
just want to survive today so I can come back, continue
Yeah.
to do the work tomorrow. And hopefully community will appreciate what I am able to do and recognize that I'm not a king or a queen
Yeah.
in government, that I do work with others to get to compromise, and that I try to be reasonable. Sometimes I'm better at the negotiations to get us to yes than the detailed policy work, because the skill set that I bring to the table is it's not as common as one might think for a lawmaker. It is not.
Yeah.
And I hope I have influence on others to carry themselves in that way. And I have some great influences in my legislative career that I'm like, okay, if I can do what Sharon Tomiko Santos has
Yeah.
done for 25 years, Nicole Macri is great.
Yeah.
And some of our senior members of the Legislative Black Caucus have, had to stand out alone and be misunderstood and feel
Yeah.
silenced or be silenced, literally culturally. And
Yeah.
if I can say things without the baggages they have to experience, then let me be the next voice that is outspoken. And then at some point, I got to pass on the baton. I can't do this forever. So I'm already looking for
No,
someone to
none
come
of
do
us
this better
can,
than me. Hmm.
mentally or physically.
Right?
Mentally more than physically, I think.
I know. When I say I'm not okay, it's like,
Yeah, no, that's true. I really have respect for people, and I said this last week, who operate in that world where they have to deal daily, one-on-one with people that have this image of our people that is so false and so fake and so just unreal. And I just respect you highly. People who can do that highly. I consider myself sheltered because I can come in that world, but I don't have to.
hmm
Yeah, I
hmm
come in there when I have to, and then
hmm
but I respect people who have to live in that world and who do a job, especially the kind of job that you're doing, who address real issues that
hmm
are facing people every day, that are devastating people every day. Family restorations, those are real issues. Housing, all those things are just real issues that affect
Behavioral
people's
health.
lives.
Like in the Black community, we need to talk about behavioral health, mental health even more
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's going to be put upon us in the criminal legal system if we don't address our own
yeah.
pain.
That's amazing me. It amazes me that after the integration, after the 60s, the whole country didn't create these community-based mental health. I think we do, but not in the way that it should have been done, and deal with the mental health, not just of people, Black Africans, but of the whites
Oh
who had
yeah,
been
right.
who needed to adjust to a different dynamic, a different paradigm than
Hmm.
their grandfathers and their fathers had dealt with, and many of them never adjusted.
Right.
Many of them never adjusted. They just pretended to be okay,
I mean,
but they weren't okay
it's
until
very,
now Trump came along and that gave them a way. They gave them a reason to just act out, like our kids. An occasion to act out when all of the time they were never okay. They were just pretending.
well, definitely. I mean, we saw that play out in the 70s and 80s. And then when
Yeah,
folks saw that, Black folks, even though with the data on affirmative action, Black folks were still not getting the opportunities. It was the white women. But seeing folks have independence, financial, economic, justice, if you will, like that, and seeing how there's still many folks in the white community aren't willing to invest in the things that are helping the whole community. So if you don't
yeah,
have the behavioral health coalitions, if you don't have the strengthening of our schools, that
yeah,
if you live into this notion of like rising tides lift all boats,
yeah.
like Black advocacy is that. Like
Yeah, that's what we have always done. We've never said you can't get on the boat as we sail toward freedom. Everybody come on board. That's probably
Mhm.
been one of the things that hurt us, but
Right.
that's who we are. And I'm not as a minister, I'm proud of that reality that's our nature. I mean, that was the nature of Africa. When
Mhm.
people would come over from Europe, we welcomed them in. We had no idea who they were and what they wanted until it was too late. I mean, we
Mhm.
thought everybody was like us. Everybody cared about everybody.
Well, some of them
Everybody
are
wanted the
not
best.
like us.
Well, we found out the hard way. I think Africa is now trying to take back some of their resources. Most of the resources in Africa, they don't even control. So
Right.
minerals and stuff. So, but they were tricked. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. I think that the one of the observations I want to make before we go and see how you react to this, I looked at you said iron sharpens iron, but then the quickest way to dull a knife is cutting on hard surfaces like ceramics or granite surfaces that won't can't that's the quickest way to dull a knife. And yeah, I think you answered it that issue or that question or that reality early on when you said that sometimes you have to walk away.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell us about a little bit about that, walking
Um,
away, how you do that?
um, uh,
Because you don't want to walk away angry, walk
right.
away hostile.
I think, I mean, I can give an example, bill development, where I could see that I wasn't making progress on the compromise. Wasn't getting folks to the table to really, move in good faith. There are people who believe that they were working in good faith, and then there were people who were literally not. And I realized that I could try to push the legislation through, and quite frankly, it could have gotten very far and extended a lot of resources that would have probably killed other bills, really good bills. Like, we need rent stabilization in Washington State. But if I were to focus on my bill and not be able to help the advocacy on rent stabilization, is that possible? I don't know. And so I decided to walk away in terms of having that bill move forward and get to the finish line, get to the governor's desk this year, because I could spend the time in interim learning, listening, and hearing more information that would strengthen it, that would help people come to the table in ways that are more obvious and more productive. And I think that's really critical around bill development. In my personal life, I'm still learning. Like, I'm loyal.
Yeah,
I really want to, like, I still want to be your friend. But then I'm like, well, can you stop calling me names? Please. Or I will do things in terms of
yeah,
friendship where I shrink myself in order to say, well, I don't want to be disagreeable because I don't want to lose a
yeah,
friend. And
yeah,
so I'm learning how to protect my peace
yeah,
in my personal world, and then build those skills for protecting my peace in my working world. And through counseling and therapy and prayer, I'm
yeah.
making progress. I am.
Yeah, great. Well, we all are struggling in that area, believe me. One of your metaphors was that seasons, or you look at like your work in seasons.
Mhm.
And what do you say to people who may be going through a night season that's lasting longer than they thought it was going to be? How do you keep yourself um, focused and keep your energy and keep your enthusiasm, because there are some nights that are longer than others, some nights
Literally.
look like
Um,
they will never end.
Yeah, well, we have lots of nights like that on the legislative
Yeah,
calendar where we go till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and tensions are high.
literally, yeah,
Yeah. I would say, you do not have to be happy all the time. That you can
okay,
experience your feelings. The question is, how do you express your feelings in a way that is your honest truth, but is not harmful to others?
okay,
I have learned that sometimes in my pain and anguish, my words can be hurtful, or just my directness in my pain and anguish can lead folks to not want to engage with me. And I don't ever want that. I would have to deal with that being a Black woman. I
yeah,
have to deal with that being a Black attorney. I
yeah,
have to deal with it being my father's daughter.
yeah, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so that's one reason why I do a lot to try to examine how am I processing what I'm experiencing right now, and not just in the intellectual way. Can
yeah,
I trust the help that's being offered to me? Can I
yeah,
ask for help? And once I ask for help, if it doesn't come in the shape that I really want or need, can I decline the help? You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
like, the
yeah.
house is burning, but I don't need you to mow my lawn.
That's not the help I need right now.
Exactly, exactly. And then listening
Uh,
for that very same thing to when I offer help to someone else, I can
mhm.
say, what can I do? Or here's what I can do within the role that I have
Right.
to ensure that, maybe it's appropriate, for what they need of what I can do. Again, I'm not going to go mow your lawn if you
Yeah,
need a bucket of water. So
yeah,
I might not have
yeah,
that bucket of water, but I know the guy who manages the fire station down the street. Let me get on the phone there.
yeah,
Those are things that I try to approach when I'm helping others or when someone is helping me, and then
yeah,
just I'm trying to have less guilt, feeling less
yeah,
guilty about receiving the help,
yeah,
because we are a society that's all about self-reliance and like, what does that
yeah,
really
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true.
Mhm.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that you were talking about is don't diminish what you're doing. Just try to find ways to get through this.
Mhm.
Find ways that really and seek help
Yeah.
from people to help you make it through this. Because,
Mhm.
like you said, we can't make it through these nights all by ourselves. We need friends. We
We
need
do. We do.
mutuality. We need mutual support.
Yes.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
And
And you'll have
truly,
that discernment that
your
will
words are
make it easier every time. Mhm.
your words are sharpening, hopefully, a lot of lives, people who may not be on now, but who will be looking at this during the week. So I really appreciate you.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate this conversation. Jamelia, it's Jamelia, is that
Jamila.
right?
Jamila.
Jamila,
Hmm.
Jamila
Hmm.
Taylor. I always get people's name wrong. I don't know. I guess it's
Okay.
that.
I'm here. I'm listening.
We're Representative Taylor, we are delighted to have you and thank you for your time and I appreciate this time. Send us the information. We'll get it into our newsletter and whenever you want to speak to anybody in the central area and you want to use the facility, New Hope is available.
Thank you.
God bless you and have a
Thank you.
great evening.
Have a good one.
Thank
Bye.
all of you for tuning in to the Bible class tonight.